All right, we have an exciting morning this morning. Today is day one of working on the XJR. So I'm just gonna pull the Chevy forward, that way I can get the car out, and we're gonna be driving it up to the shop. All right, we're on the way, and I gotta say, it feels really good to drive this thing again. Not to jinx myself, but so far, driving her gently seems fine. I think one of the tires might be a little bit low, but she hasn't been running rough. She was a little slow to start, which I think the battery was just a little low because it's just been sitting for so long, but generally going okay so far. So we made it to the shop, and it flashed a low engine coolant warning, but didn't overheat or anything. It had just started to dip a little low. Other than that, car behaved just fine. So yeah, we're basically going to just wrap up the brake bleeding on the XJS, roll that out, and roll this in. But Murphy's Law, yesterday everything was fine at the shop. Today, power's off. They're still doing the repairs from Hurricane Ian, so I'm guessing they're just working on the grid, but it's okay. We've got the door rolled up, we got enough light to at least do the basics. I am so excited to start working on her again. All right, so the brake fluid flush is done on the XJS. We've pulled the car out, and we are about to pull the XJR in for where it's gonna live for a little while, honestly. So we'll get this thing pulled in here, and actually we're gonna do one little look around the shop while we have some space. So every time we shuffle things around here, we try to put some more stuff away, get a little more organized, and a little piece at a time. But each day it gets a little bit better. We have a little more working room, and we're getting a little more settled in. All right, she's in. So this is where she's gonna live for a while. Hopefully this isn't gonna take forever, but you never know with these things. So we're prepared to kind of delve in and take the time it needs to get it done right. So now for a quick recap on what we are actually doing. If you're new here, if you haven't seen the XJR before and you don't know what the idea is, we're gonna tell you exactly what's about to happen. In previous videos, we've done a full hose service, so we replaced almost every single hose in this engine bay. We did the cold air intake, mostly just for the cool noise. We did a pulley on the blower, which was awesome, and a few other service pieces as well while we were in there. Basically, it started to have another little bit of an issue, which I think by upping the boost, we've kind of revealed another problem that it had. So the idea is we're basically doing a super deep service. We're going to be pulling the cylinder heads off. We're going to be putting upgraded head gaskets in, brand new, better head bolts, a bunch of other stuff. Probably going to get the cylinder heads checked and everything as well. And then the goal is to put this thing back together stronger than it ever was. And then also we've got some performance parts. I've got a huge front mount intercooler that's going to be replacing the factory one. That's going to be a really exciting part of the video as well. I think it's going to look amazing stuffed in there, but it does fit. So yeah, that's basically the scope of the full project of what we're looking to do while the Jag is in here. Now, unlike some of our other video series where we will focus on one singular task and make a comprehensive video about that, because of the scale of this, we're just gonna do part 1, part 2, part 3, and basically work on it as we work on it. Essentially, we'll just get as far as we can each day. We'll document what we're doing the best we can, but it's not gonna necessarily be concise things of like, hey, here's how to remove this, like some of our other videos have been. Again, just with the scale of this project, it's not necessarily reasonable to be able to do it that way, but follow along and you guys are gonna learn a lot, and honestly, you're gonna see a pretty cool end result, I think. Definitely gonna miss having it at my house. So, no more excuses, we're gonna start turning some wrenches on this thing. Step 1 is gonna be basically clearing out the engine bay. So we're gonna remove some of the plastic trim covers, and we're actually gonna end up taking the hood off and the front bumper off as well to give us better access to everything we're gonna be working on. So these trims are super easy to take off, literally just a Phillips head screw right here, and I don't even have a screw on that side, so hey. So I'm gonna pop these guys off real quick and get them out of the way, then we'll probably focus on removing the hood, which should just be, hopefully, a few bolts and we're off and running. So I already got the other two covers off, but I just remembered something kind of cool. Major kudos to James for tracking down a factory toolkit. In the States, I don't think any of the XJs actually came with this. I think this was a Euro-only option, and he managed to actually track down one of these in perfect condition, and he was kind enough to surprise me with that as a gift. So this car is officially equipped with the pretty rare option for the States. All right, now we've got those removed. Time to pull the grills out. That should give us access to the hood hinges. So I'm gonna pull these grills, and then I'm gonna pull the actual surround for the grills out next. Okay, get the little screw out there. Rocks forward like that, and it just lifts out. Okay, get this little guy out here. There we go. All right, pop quiz. In the comments, tell me number 1, what this emblem is called, and number 2, what this emblem is called. Leave that in the comments below. I want to see if you guys know. So next up, we got to remove these Torx right here, and these are just T30. So should be a common size. And remove these, and that'll let us pull the grill surround. All right, there we go. And you can see the factory front mount intercooler right there, which we will be replacing. You can also see how filthy my poor car is after that hurricane. It is absolutely nuts how much dirt and dust and tree debris it got covered in literally just 2 days ago. So after looking at it a little bit, we're actually not going to remove the hinges with the hood. We're going to leave them on the car. So we're actually going to just undo the bolts that actually bolt the hood itself. And that would be these guys right here and those guys right there. And then it looks like there's basically a clip on these gas struts, and it looks like you just pop this little guy off maybe with a flat blade, and hopefully this thing will just come off. All right, this is definitely a 2-person operation, so James and I are going to be working on removing the hood. So basically with these clips, when you pull them back, it releases its hold on the little ball that's in here. The clip itself doesn't appear to actually come off. So what we've done, we've basically just staged a tool on each side in the clip, ready to go. So for when we're ready to release it, you can just pull on the tool and it should pop the ram off of the ball. Those are 13 mil, so we've got 13 mil sockets ready to go on each side. So each of us can take one side, make sure we have the hood supported while we're doing this. All right, we're freeing up some jack stands to get the front of the car in the air, but for now I figured I'd remove the cold air intake, as that's pretty easy. Just a couple screws, and it comes right out. And with how much of a pain it was to get the cone filter and all that lined up through, I'm just bringing the whole housing with it. Okay, so I just removed the trims that go between and beneath the headlights here. There's basically just one of those little plastic, kind of like, you know, press-in clips that goes into this hole here, and then there's a Phillips head screw that just pins it right there. So loosen that. You don't even have to take it the whole way out. It'll just slide out of the slot, and then just carefully want to wiggle out the plastic clip out of that hole. Okay, we have her in the air, and we have the front wheels off just to give us a bit more clearance. We're taking the front bumper off, so you know we're gonna have to be messing around with these inner fender liners and stuff like that, so it just made sense to make it a little easier. So we are going to do that now and start working on removing this. I know that for the inner fender liner, you've got basically these clips that you have to pop off. This little guy down here, one up there, and then you can choose how far back you actually want to go. And then the bumper itself I've never actually taken off. All right, we got the underbody tray out from underneath the bumper. Along the front leading edge there, it was held in with like some T30 screws, so those just came right out. And then there was one zip tie tying it to a cross member right there. All right, front bumper is about to come off. So if you have fog lights, if you're running an XJR, I think those have fogs. I'm not sure about the XJ8s. Make sure you unplug them. The plugs are basically just kind of on either side. Right in here, down low, something like that. There we go, there. So unplug those. Yeah, pretty much. The only other thing you have to do is there's two 19 mil bolts, these giant guys here, and they basically live up in that hole right there. So literally just 19 mil, remove those, and the whole bumper, and I think the whole crash bar and everything comes out all as one. So we're about to find out. Yeah, that's just for the All right, this is what she looks like without a bumper or a hood. So I think we're gonna have plenty of room to work on the intercooler now. I'm not too worried about that. All right, we are officially draining the coolant. So we basically just got a bucket under there, and there is essentially just a little drain plug, which you can see sort of right above my finger. So you just unscrew that. It should be finger tight. And yeah, then basically just crack your cap here and it'll start bleeding out. Just be careful, because if you crack the cap all the way, it is like a laser beam when it comes out of there. It is like dead straight and it will get all over everything. All right, so we've got the cap all the way off the reservoir now. Basically, it's drained most of the coolant out. This is the fill port just for like topping off the system. There's a whole crazy fill procedure to make sure that the system has no air in it, and this plug is basically part of that. And we are using a 3/4 inch, basically like a, you know, Allen wrench or hex wrench, just attached to a socket. So I'm gonna crack this real quick as well. And that's another way of letting some air in and letting some coolant out from the highest parts of the engine here. Okay, we are back for day 2 working on the Jag. So yesterday we got the bumper off, the hood off, just some of the big bits and pieces. So today we're continuing to tear the thing down. Probably going to be removing all of the hoses that connect to the top end, stuff like that. So basically just, you know, the stuff that's in the way of us actually getting the blower out, getting those charged air coolers out, you know, all the stuff that then eventually leads to the cylinder heads. Now, if you watched the hose service video, you'll know that Jags have everyone's least favorite style of hose clamp, these springy ones. You know, they work really well for 1 or 2 hoses where it's quick, as long as they conveniently are lined up correctly and are accessible. But as you can tell by this engine bay, quite often these hose clamps are not in a convenient area. So when I put this all back together, I tried to line these up to where they're very reachable with pliers, you know, to make it more serviceable. We'll see if I did a good job on that now. All right, so we're gonna squeeze these guys back, and I expect these top ones to be pretty easy just because they're very accessible. But yeah, essentially, that's how these clamps work. Boom. So I'm gonna loosen all these guys up, and then we're gonna pop these hoses and just see how good of a job we did draining that coolant. There's probably still gonna be some left in these charge air coolers up here. So yeah, we'll just be ready with some shop towels and stuff to sop up anything that starts to drip, and it'll be what it is. And this may sound really dumb to a lot of you, but if this is your first time doing something, I would always suggest taking photos of the routing of your hoses and all that stuff. Just in case, you know, if a month goes by and you forget how they all go back together, you definitely want to make sure that the correct one ends up on the correct place. So for me, obviously, I'm videotaping this whole process, so I have documentation. If you're just doing it yourself, maybe take a few quick photos and just, you know, kind of make sure you have a way of looking back and seeing how it all goes back together. All right, now if you're removing the intercooler like I am, it's important to note that it also has a drain, just like the radiator. I actually just discovered that for the first time, but it made it way nicer to drain from the bottom rather than pulling the hose and having it all dumped down the side. And basically, that's it right there, and it's the same exact style. It's just like the little finger screw thing. So yeah, pop that off, and now I'm gonna take the hose connections off. I've already popped this one off on this side, and we just got the one on that side. And then, as mentioned, I've already worked on the top ones here, and those came off with no issue. All right, so got this side disconnected as well, and I'm leaving this hose routed through here for the time being until I see, you know, where the intercooler lands, like the new one. And then also you've got this one little guy here as well, which I think is a kind of like a bypass that goes back up to the reservoir there as well. All right, well, we are pretty much ready to pull this intercooler out, to be honest. Now the hoses are disconnected. It looks like it's just 2 10mm bolts on the bottom corners here. And then these little alignment studs right up here look like they just poke through like a rubber bushing. So I think once those bottom bolts are undone, the thing can kind of come downward and outward and basically just drop out. And just like magic, the intercooler is out. So, brought it over here so you can see the difference between what came out, which is this guy right here, and what's going to be going in, which is this really big guy right here. And I'm very excited because, again, this should make a big difference performance-wise, really combating the heat soak issues that the Eaton is known for. Kind of fun fact, the stock intercooler is apparently a Denso part. I did not know that. I have a feeling we may get some questions about what this intercooler is. This is sold by Powerhouse UK. They are a Jaguar specialist along with a couple other things, but they sell this specifically for the X308 XJR, and it is a direct bolt-in. As you can see, the hose connections are in the same place, the mounting points are in the same place, it has the correct like mounting studs, it even has this little port here for that overflow hose I showed you earlier. it's just significantly thicker and just a much better design. So this thing should significantly help. But like I said, Powerhouse UK, go check them out, they're awesome, and I'll try and include a link in the description as well to this exact part. So I did a quick check just to make sure that front mount would fit, and there was something I discovered. With the extra thickness, it actually has a clearance issue with the hood hinges, but only if you try and install it with the hood hinges still in place. If you remove the hood hinges, it should install no issue, and then you can reinstall the hood hinges after the fact. It's just a little bit of a geometry issue, I'll show you. So because of the extra thickness and how you have to put it in at an angle to clear this bottom bar, basically the extra thickness at the front causes it to contact the hood hinge here at the leading edge. Once it's actually installed, the thickness won't matter because it'll level back out, as you can see with my hand there. But when you're trying to put it in, it hits. So I'm going to take these out, which is just these three 13mm bolts right here. I think they're 13s. Yep, 13s. I've already marked this bracket. I'm not sure if this has adjustability or not, but we just used a silver Sharpie just to mark that, so it'll drop right back in the same place when we put it back on. All right, so those three bolts, two of them do come through what looks like the horn bracket here, so I'm actually going to remove the horns at the same time, because I have a feeling that once I pull the front two bolts out, this thing's just going to be loose. So I'm going to unplug the horn, which looks like this little guy here, and then pull this whole assembly out, and I'll do the same on the other side. So a little bit of learning, I guess this is actually a separate nut that goes on this stud. So there's a nut here, and then this is actually the bolt that passes through this guy right here. So actually just taking these nuts off first, then I can remove the horn assembly, and then I can actually back the whole bolt the rest of the way through. I already started on the first one, and then we're going to unplug these two little guys down here. I guess it's like a black and a yellow wire. They go into the horn. All right, so we've got this hood hinge off now. And the only difference on the other side is that there's this grounding strap, so you just want to make sure that you keep track of that when you undo this bolt right here, or this nut, I should say. The grounding strap is pinned underneath that nut. So yeah, keep track of that. Other than that, just removes the same way. All right, y'all, I couldn't resist. I had to at least give you a teaser of what this thing's going to look like in here. I mean, it is basically flush with this, and it maximizes every possible inch of space. And you are definitely going to be able to see that behind the grills at the front of the car. Alright, so now we had our fun with playing around with the intercooler, it's time to keep going on removing some of the hoses and top-end components on the engine. So we're going to pull some of these little hard lines here. They just have like the squeeze clips where you squeeze on this little guy and they'll pop out. So we got this one, this little split point here, which goes to the actual intercooler loop right here, that little guy. So that splits in half nice and easy there. And then we got this one which runs into the actual main radiator, and all three of those lead back to the reservoir. And you know, I think I mentioned this in the hose video as well, but just to show you now, these are supposed to cross over like this. A lot of people put this back the wrong way around and then have issues with coolant blowing off. And everything online says you are supposed to make sure that this one crosses over this one. So from everything I've seen, that's the way it's supposed to be. All right, now those lines are removed, we're going to remove this harness here. So basically unplugging all of these little plugs and basically just pulling back the harness, because it does basically mount to the valve covers here, and in a couple places it actually mounts to, I think, the cylinder head itself, or at least very close, so it's going to be in the way. So like I said, we need to pull that harness back and out of the way towards the firewall a little. That should give us some clearance there, and then we'll move on to the top end. Alright, partway through undoing the harness here, just doing a quick update. We pulled the coil covers off. It's just 6-7mm bolts, super easy, they came right out. And we're going to obviously have to unplug the actual coils themselves, and then the whole harness will come out because it does poke through the back of the valve cover here, so we'll need to pull that out and put it back out of the way. And then yeah, I guess interesting discovery. It looks like, judging here, this little buildup in the corners right here that you can see, it's black, and at first I thought it was like oil and dirt or something like that, but it's dry, and on second inspection I think it may be rubber from this belt. This belt is starting to look a little worn, and I'm wondering if I'm getting some belt slip, because I have not replaced the tensioner on this. So I think I'm actually going to get a new belt, maybe both new belts and a new tensioner, just to combat that, because obviously belt slip means it's not turning it as fast as it could be, which means we're not getting as much boost as we should. Alright, we pulled the wires off the coils there, and we're going to remove this one little, I think it's like a boost pressure line here, whatever this little guy is. Pop him off, because we're going to be removing this soon. And that just pops out the back here. and we'll slide that out. We've also unplugged both the connections to the throttle body here as well. There's one going in this way, and then this round one that goes in up there. This one tricked me. You don't press this tab in, pull that tab out. That one got me. Alright, I've been avoiding messing with these radiator hoses just because they're big and annoying, but I'm going to pop these off now, and then basically we're going to take this coolant crossover / thermostat assembly, remove that, and then I think it's just some 8mm bolts if I'm correct. This is the thermostat housing, which you probably don't even have to remove. I think it's these guys down here where it actually bolts into the inlet, which is the cylinder head inlet, I believe. And then same on this side, 2 bolts there, and this whole thing should come off. This guy is super fun, by the way. You'll probably see that in the other video. It's just such a short piece of hose, but it's also very thick, and it's just annoying to get on and off. But we're going to fight it, get it off, and then we'll probably remove this little hat here and start work on maybe removing the charge air coolers as well. Alright, we got the coolant crossover off. It was exactly as annoying as I remembered it being. And especially because I forgot there's a little hose that connects underneath that tight 90-degree corner one I showed you guys earlier. But a little bit of farting around, and thankfully, again, when I put the clips back last time, I put them in more reachable places. It only took me about 10 minutes. This one. This is the annoying one. But it's off. There we go. Alright. Well, making more progress. This is the hose that was originally leaking that caused me to do the hose service in the first place, and this hose is obviously still fine, but it runs underneath the blower, so that one's going to stay there until this top end stuff comes off. I do notice we still got some coolant down in there, so I'm going to try and actually get as much of that out as I can. You know, obviously the goal is to have this thing as dry as possible before we pull those cylinder heads, just to, you know, minimize how much of a waterfall we have. Alright, so bunch of hoses off. I think the next step we're going to be removing the kind of the blower hat, as I call it. Basically the manifold piece that bolts onto the top of the blower and goes into the charge air coolers. So basically there's a little flange at the back of that we're going to undo first, and then there's the 4 bolts that actually hold it to the blower. Usually then you can kind of wiggle the thing. And that would be these 10 mils right here. And then you can kind of sort of see, but down in there, there's another one. So you kind of just go in from the back like that, underneath, and you'll be able to get to it. And if you do those 3, that'll let you remove this component. And then as you can see, you got these bolts here, which go onto the charge air coolers, but the ones down towards the center here, you really can't access easily until you remove this. Alright, exactly as described, those 3 bolts and then the 4 around the edge, and lifted the hat off. The gasket came with the hat. The way it's designed, it's supposed to pick it up with it. There's little clips that hold it on. Interesting thing I just discovered. There's a not insignificant amount of oil here on this surface, and strangely, it looks like mostly it's been outside of the gasket. It looks like there may have been a little intrusion here, and the only thing I can think of is if it was maybe coming up through this thread right here or something like that. That's where it seems to be the heaviest. It doesn't seem like it's coming from like the gear case or anything like that. I can't really think of anywhere else it would come from that would get it right there. So definitely an interesting thing we're gonna have to look into and obviously resolve when we put this all back together. So now that I have that all wiped up, I'm going to remove these little connector tube pieces here. I completely forget what they're called, and I'm going to inspect them because I think I do see a little oil residue in them as well. So I'm going to take these 2 10 mils off on each side. And you know, it's funny actually, I was incorrect. I forgot that these top ones you do from this side, the other ones you actually do from the back. So you probably could have done them in either order, but that was a very easy way of doing it, so there's nothing wrong with that. Alright, we definitely were getting some oil intrusion into there as well. So another exciting symptom here. We got to figure out exactly what was going on there to cause oil to be getting into kind of the top end of the blower and up through those charge air coolers. So curious to see if I can find any residue inside of the charge air coolers as well on the air side of the circuit, right? Because obviously coming from the blower, this is the air side of the circuit. So we'll see what we dig into once we get those things off, but for now we're forging ahead on removing the throttle body and removing the blower. Alright, I think next up I'm going to be popping this here belt off, just using the tensioner down in there. And basically it's like a Ford style one where you can just put a 1/2 inch ratchet right in the little square peg doodad down there, and you can just use this as a lever to take the tension off the belt and pop it off. As soon as that's done, There's just a couple bolts on the front of the blower here. And then also mine has been slightly modified. And this is a mod that a lot of people do to make it a little easier for service. But basically the back bolt, which there's no way I'm going to be able to show you, underneath the intake manifold, or the throttle body there, has actually been slotted. So from the factory, it's a ring with a bolt that goes through it, and a lot of people cut the very back edge of it, which allows the blower to actually slide out and up without having to take a lot of extra really fiddly stuff off of the back, unless you kind of change the order in which you do things. And actually, I completely forgot that I have a breaker bar, so I'm just going to use that for extra leverage so I don't strain myself. But if you don't have a breaker bar, you can still just use a socket and then throw like a jack handle on something just to get a little extra leverage. So take the tension off like that, and the belt will come right off. Easy peasy. Alright, so next up, I think I'm actually going to remove the throttle body because we're pretty close already. So basically you just got to remove the throttle cable here. Basically you just pop this little plastic tab up, which I think I can just do right now, unless there's something stopping me. So yeah, anyway, I won't make you watch me oh, there it is. Ha! Okay, you pop that up, and it loops through like that, and that lets you slide the little piece out at the end, like so, sort of. Anyway, I'll need both hands, but basically once you loosen the cable, this little tab slides out just like other throttle cables. Once that's done, I just gotta undo this little plug down here, and then there's, I believe, just 4 bolts kind of on the corners, possibly a 5th. I will double check that now, but yeah, and they look like they are 10 mils. And I almost forgot, we got the little hose here, and there's one down there as well. I gotta pop those off too. I guess, yeah, so I'm going to get those off as well, but yeah, I think it is just the 4 bolts that hold this thing on, so we should be good to pull it off as soon as those hoses are off. Alright, throttle body is out as well. Alright, I'm running a little shy on time for today, so we're probably going to be wrapping this this segment up, this one video at least. Like I said, it's not necessarily a cohesive, like here's how to do this one thing. As you can see, we're doing a lot of stuff all at once. I think the last thing I'll probably do is pull the coils, and I think those are just 2 7mm bolts on each coil. That's a quick and easy thing that I can get done before I leave here, and that'll probably be me done for the day.